Let's look at the agenda. All right, so here's my plan on how we're going to split this up in the next 14 weeks that we're going to be together. The first week is am I recording? I think I'm recording. Yes. First week will be the development environment. So hopefully by next Tuesday, you'll have the development environment all set up, which includes having locally your Node.js running locally, your MongoDB running locally, using the WebStorm IDE. I know there's quite a few IDEs out there, but just to make it easy for us to be able to support you, I like to standardize on the IDE, all right? So that for debugging and to be able to help you out. So this week we're going to focus on this assignment number 1. Which is going to walk you through setting up your local environment. You're going to download Node.js. You can install it locally, right? And it's going to install at least 2 executables, or more executables, but 2 executables in particular. One of them is going to be the Node.js interpreter, right? The JavaScript interpreter, which is called Node. That's going to allow you to just say Node and then some JavaScript, and it'll execute it locally on your desktop. Yes. The other executable that's going to install for you is Npm. Npm is Node Package Manager that allows you to install libraries, right? Node.js libraries. In particular, we want to install the Express library, right? So you would do something like Npm install Express, right? So this one walks you through downloading Node.js. Right, 694 will be okay. Download it locally and run it locally on your machine. Obviously, for your particular, it'll download for your correct operating system. You'll also download MongoDB. Right, it's free. You can install it locally again for your particular operating system. MongoDB is going to install 2 executables, again, that we are interested in. One of them is going to be MongoD, right? MongoD, which is the daemon, right? This is the database, the actual database that when you run it, it'll start up a server, right? That will allow you to create databases and queries and inserts and updates and whatnot. Yes, right? For that to execute, you're going to need a local a directory called /data/db. That's where, by default, it's going to store all your databases. All your data will be stored under there. On Macs, I suggest installing it under user/local/mongo. Right? On PCs, I guess it would be under program files, I guess. On a Mac, you probably need to have administration privileges to do this. So you might need to run a couple things using sudo, right, and typing your password. Please add the Mongo bin directory. Where the bin, in that bin directory, you'll have MongoD, right, the executable for the server. Add it to your path so that you can execute it right from anywhere on the terminal. To add or change path, you can do that on a Mac using the bash profile file under your local home directory, right? On a PC, I think you would use your environment variables, right, from your system properties. When you type MongoD at the terminal, it'll start MongoDB listening. The other executable that we're going to be using in Mongo is the Mongo client, right? If you type Mongo, right, it'll allow you to connect to the database and start interacting with the database manually. Okay, so you can insert, update, query, do all sorts of things manually at the command line. Right, so those 2 executables, MongoD and Mongo. Also, you'll need to create a Git account if you don't already have one. If you already have a Git account, you create a repository specific for this course, right? And I will ask you to please, that repository that you create, the name, I want to standardize on that name, right? I want you to name it last name dash first name dash webdev. Okay, unless it collides with some other repo that happens to be called that. I don't think so. I hope not. And also I need you to invite all the TAs and myself, invite us as collaborators, and gives us permission to write to that repo. Okay. What that allows us to do is that we're going to be able to clone that repo locally, right, and grade you. That's one thing, right? For that we only need read permission, right? But if you give us write permission, you will also allow us to help you. If you run into a problem, right, you're stuck somewhere, ideally you would first do some debugging of your own, right? Identify which file or files you think the problem is, right? Copy those files or copy a link to those files, right? And go to Piazza and say, hey, I think I have a problem in this line or these two lines. Why is this not working? Right? And provide a link to those files. Yes? That will allow us to clone down your repo, try to reproduce a problem locally on our machine, perhaps fix it for you, right? And then post that solution to your repo. Then you're going to clone that back. You're going to pull those changes, and there you have something fixed for us, right? If you don't give us write permissions, we won't be able to do that, right? We're going to be exchanging back and forth, a whole bunch of messages, wasteful messages back and forth to what line of code, where is it, what file, what this and that or the other, right? So please, please help us help you, right? Give us write permission to your repo. Give us some evidence that you have actually debugged this a little bit. You have spent some effort. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Somebody mentioned on Piazza that most of us probably don't have a paid for GitHub account.
You don't need one. They can be public, right? If they're public, they're not paid.
Right. But then everybody's working the same homework.
That's okay. Hopefully everybody will have the same homework. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So although the university has GitHub, right? I think you can have GitHub through the university, so that's okay. You can use the university's GitHub. Okay, and that could be private. Those are private. Still, you need to invite myself and the TAs as well, so that we can log in and clone down your repo. All right? Okay. Let's see. If you have a Mac, you already have Git installed on your machines, right? If you have a PC, you'll need to download a Git client. Here's a couple. There's a preferred one, the Git SCM download. Install it locally, right? And this will be the client that you'll use to communicate with GitHub. I have a started template repo that you're going to need to clone down this repository and use it as a template, as a start template. Okay, from where you begin to use your project or your assignments and whatnot. Right? I've already I have steps here that show you how to do it. Perhaps ask you to create a directory where you're going to do all your work related to the university. Under that directory, I'm going to ask you to clone down this repository. Okay, if you copy that, I'm asking you to please clone this. You can grab the URL either from my documentation or from here. You can grab that, clone it, which I've done already. And I think I have it. Let me close this. I think it's this one. So if I clone it down, you can do it right from within the web, the IDE. You could say check out from version control. Don't use GitHub, just Git. You can paste that repository, the repository that you can just copy from there, and you say clone. It'll clone down, right, and copy all the source code locally on your machine, which I've already done. Okay. After you clone it, it'll ask you to rename it, give it another name. I think I asked you to name it, what did I call it? I think I tell you to name it somewhere. I say here, to use last name and first name. There it is, to name it this, last name, first name, dash webdev, right? To rename it like that, so that, and then push it back into GitHub. So you have your own repository, and whose name should be last name, first name, dash webdev. So mine would be Annunziato dash Jose dash webdev, right? That'll make it easy for us when we clone it down to know exactly who you are, right? And so that it make it easy for it to communicate with you. Yes? When you run it locally, right? When you run it locally, we do ask you to create. You first need to do from the terminal, either from the Windows terminal or the Mac terminal. In that directory, you'll need to do npm install. Npm install, right? What that does is that it takes this package JSON file. This JSON file it's a meta file, right? It's a file that describes your project. It says that this particular project depends on these other libraries, right? That it won't run unless it has these libraries installed locally on your machine. Okay? So npm install, npm is the node package manager or the library manager, right? Npm install, all just like that, will read your package file and it'll look at your dependencies. Right? Look at your dependencies and says, I need these libraries installed, right? It'll go and fetch these libraries, download them from the cloud, right, and install them locally in your machine. Okay? And those libraries will be installed on. I actually don't have them. So I guess I'm going to have to do that. It's going to create a brand new directory in here called node modules. There it is, node underscore modules, right? It's going to download all the libraries that it needs, right? All the dependencies locally onto that directory. And there they are. It loads those plus anything that they depend on, right? So it automatically figures out that these libraries depend on other libraries, right? And it downloads everything that it needs. In particular, what we're going to be using to begin with is the Express library and the Mongoose libraries, a couple of these. I'm going to come back to these a little later. Right now, I'm just going to focus on the Express library. I'm going to use that for the next couple of weeks. Once it's installed locally, you can run it. You'll notice that there is one JavaScript which is called the server.js file. The server.js file, right? That is a JavaScript file, right? That creates a very simple, trivial HTTP server, right, with just 3 lines of code. Right? Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. If I open up server.js, it's more than 3 lines of code, of which really we don't really need these 3 for the server. We only need these 2 over here. Right? Load the Express library. Right? Notice that it says require. It's the same thing as import or include, right, in other languages. Just load this library. Yes? Create an instance of it. And then down below over here is the other part, right? Is figures out which port to use. Local is going to use port 3000. But when you deploy it to Heroku, it'll use whatever Heroku's port says. Okay? Since Heroku is a shared environment, okay, you don't have the server all to yourself, right? It does some port forwarding and figures out which port it's supposed to be listening at, right? And so locally, in its own environment variables, it knows which port you should be using, your server is listening at, right? From the outside, it looks like it's listening at port 80, right? So you don't have to provide a port, but internally, it's actually listening at some other port, right? But you don't need to know that port because it's configured in an environment variable, process.env.port. This allows Node.js to look at the local environment variable, read that environment variable port, and use that port, right? Whatever the system admin, right? Whatever their process is, right? To provide you with a port number. So at runtime, this is figured out, right? So this server can run locally or in Heroku, right? Either one, right? If it has this, that means it says, I'm in Heroku, I'm going to use that port. If this is undefined, notice the or here, right? If that's undefined, then it'll be 3000. So the port will be either the Heroku's port or 3000 locally. Yes? Right, so really is one line of code. This you can combine this into one single line. I guess you could combine this into a single line, but really 2 lines of code we need for this server to run. Right? And all right, fine, I'll add a 3rd line in there to say that all static content, all HTML or CSS, JavaScript, all static content is going to live under the public directory, a local public directory. There it is, this public directory. So there's our index page, index.html page, right? So that's our default page, right? If you don't ask for any page, that's the page you see. So yeah, so 3 lines of code. So if you run this, you can run it using Node and then server.js. You run it, and notice it's blocked. It's listening at port 3000, waiting for someone to come and hit it with the browser. So let's do that. Right. So if we go to the browser and we try to go to localhost 3000, there it is. We have webdev course homepage. This is the default page that you should see in the template. This is what the TAs and myself are going to look for when we grade you next Tuesday, next week. If you have this running, right? Very easy. Also, we're going to go visit your Heroku instance, right? And see that you have this running, right? Remotely on your Heroku instance. So it should run locally. It should run at your Heroku or AWS or OpenShift, whatever you're using, right? We'll check to see that it works. Yes? Everybody good? Right? So this is the home page of for your course. Right, for this course, this is your homepage. This homepage, you should replace this entirely, and this homepage should look spectacular. You're free to use any template, anything that makes this look spectacular. Right, I should be proud to share this URL with my colleagues, and I should be able to brag about, look what all my students are doing. Check this out and send this URL to folks that I consult with, other professors, right? And just obviously this page will be graded, right? At a minimum, it should have these links at the bottom. You should have these links anywhere you want them, right? Make them pretty, whatnot. But it should have a link to your project, right? Your project here, the project is being hosted here in the same server, right? Some students prefer to host the project elsewhere, right? You'll host their homepage and their assignments in one server and host their projects in another server. That's okay, as long as you let us know, right? Maybe you have 2 GitHub accounts, right? Or 2 repos, one for your assignments, right? For this course, and one for your project. Yes, that's okay. Maybe you have 2 different hosted environments. That's okay. You just you have to let us know, okay? We'll ask you, let us know what the GitHub accounts, GitHub repos are for both of them, right? And the URLs for both of them. If you're hosting it locally here, then this would be the home page for your project. You see that /project/index, right? It's right here. See that directory right there, project. See that? That's where you're going to do all your project work. Or if you choose to do it elsewhere in a different GitHub account, that's okay. Your assignments is going to be under here, assignment directory. So if I go back and I click on assignment, I should see the home page for your assignments. Okay, which in this case would be the login page. Right, the login page would be here. And you'll do all your work under this directory, the assignment directory. Yes? Right now I just populated with some bogus stuff here. All right, some login, profile, register, some CSS. Okay? All right. What else? All right. Also, even though we're not going to be using MongoDB for quite a while, for at least another month, right? I want you to be able to set it up already. Have that set up already. I don't want you rushing towards the end of the semester trying to set up MongoDB. Why is it not connecting to the server? I'd rather you have that ping now, right? And give us a chance to figure out what's going on early on, as opposed to putting it later and when we're trying to rush and work on it. So I'm asking you to set up a database. For a database, we're going to be using mlab, mlab.com. Just like Heroku is a hosted environment to host Node.js instances, mlab is a hosted environment that hosts MongoDB instances. Okay, and Heroku has plugins to talk to mlab, right? And I have quite a few demos that show you how to do all this, right? On how to create Heroku, how to create an account in mlab, how to connect Heroku with mlab, right? Okay, so again, for next Tuesday, create an mlab account. It's free if you keep it under 500 megabytes, which should be plenty, right? For this course. Same thing with Heroku. It's free as long as you maintain it within boundaries, which again should be plenty for this course. If you choose to use AWS instead, there is a free, well, not really free. It's if you access it with your student account, right? They give you like $100 worth of free that you can spend that can go towards time for your server running or your database running, right? You can spend those $100 towards that. The $100 should be enough to get you through the entire semester. But if you run out of it, you can ask for another $100 and they'll give it to you. They're pretty good at typically they'll go out to, for a whole year. They'll keep giving it to you until you reach that that threshold. They're pretty good at that. But otherwise, Heroku is completely free, right? So just for us to test that you have indeed successfully created a connection between the server and MongoDB or mlab, right? We have a little test harness here, and that we're going to be able to perhaps test MongoDB connection, and we say plus. We're going to do an insert into your database. We're going to do a query, right, to see that it went out. We're going to do a delete, see if it deletes it. Okay. Notice that this is the simplest of single-page applications, right? Notice that the page didn't refresh, right? We can add content plus, right? Notice that the content is changing down below, right? But the page is not refreshing. See that? The page always stayed at index.html, right? And if this were a server-side, right, dynamic application, the page would post, right? The whole page would refresh, would re-render entirely from the server, right? And that we would have that kind of awkward implementation. Also, when you remove content, notice that the page doesn't refresh. Make sense? Right? A very, very simple single-page application that tests whether your database is connected. Yes? Right. So that needs to be also completed for next Tuesday, and I have here in the to complete your assignment, right? Setting up GitHub, setting up Heroku. I have here in the development the first module. Each module has more or less the same layout on the right-hand side, right? If you go to lectures, you'll have dedicated tabs for various things that you need to complete, right? Also, they have videos about installing Node.js, what Node.js package, Npm, what it is, right? How to set up Git, right? Have videos for that. I'm going to assume that you have looked at all these videos. Please go through them. They walk you through that. How to set up Heroku. There's quite a few snapshots on how to do this, how to download and install the command line interface, right? So that you can interact with Heroku with the command line, so you can create applications of command line. deploy applications from the command line. Okay. There's a tutorial. There's a Heroku tutorial that goes through the whole thing. Right. Go through the Heroku tutorial. Right. It walks you through installing the local CLI and creating your very first Node.js server application, deploying it. Also walks you through connecting it to GitHub, so that when you deploy to GitHub, it automatically deploys it to Heroku. Very convenient. So you're working on GitHub, you push your things to your GitHub, and it automatically just restarts your server, deploys on your Heroku server, right? So you always have Heroku up to date. Yes? Go through the tutorial. It walks you through what kind of application you want to be using. We're going to be using Node.js. Okay, but there's a whole bunch of other things that Heroku supports: Java, PHP, Python, Ruby, all sorts of things that you can deploy to Heroku. There's a getting started. Go through the Node.js getting started, right? It walks you through setting it up, preparing the application, deploying it, viewing it, the proc file. You need to tell Heroku, just like we are running server.js, you need to tell Heroku, that's my server. That is how do you start the server. It's server.js. You need to tell Heroku, to start your server, use that file, server.js. Yes, you need to tell it. That happens in the proc, defining the proc file. It'll walk you through creating a dummy application, right? It'll generate a dummy name for your application. Okay. It'll be deployed, right? So you can see it running locally on your remotely on your machine, on their machines, right? And then it'll walk you through creating an app of your own from scratch. Right? It'll walk you through creating a brand new application, connecting it to GitHub, giving it a name. Connecting it to GitHub, you can select GitHub, and then you can connect it to a particular repo. You first have to create the repo, right? And again, your repo will be called something like, Annunziato-Jose-web app, webdev, yeah, right? So you connect to it, and you'll need to authenticate. You'll need to authenticate and give Heroku the necessary authentication so that it can connect to your GitHub, right? And tell it that it's interested in grabbing all that source code and deploying it to Heroku. Okay, presumably your repo already exists. Okay, I'm showing you that you need to create that repo, and from Heroku you'll need to from the dashboard you'll need to tell it which repo do you want to connect to, right? You can also tell it to automatically deploy, to auto deploy, meaning that every time you push content to your GitHub, Heroku will be notified. It will read all the source. It will redeploy and restart the server. Very convenient. Otherwise, you need to do it manually, right? Every time you deploy, you'll need to restart the server, right, manually. But it's better to just make it automatically. For MongoDB, for MLab, you'll need to create an MLab account. And once you create an account on an MLab from Heroku's elements at elements.heroku.com, this is kind of their plugins. They're plugins that allow Heroku to talk to all sorts of other services out there, okay, including MLab. Right? You can tell it that you want to connect to the MLab MongoDB. Right? If you select that, it'll say, okay, well, it'll install the MLab MongoDB plugin onto your Heroku account. It'll ask you which you'll install MLab, and then you'll need to select which application. Right? It'll be the application you're using for this course, right? You say, I want MLab to be installed in this application for this course. once you plug it in, it asks you, okay, well, which plan are you want to use? You can select just the free plan, right? The free plan meaning the 500 megabytes maximum that you can store on MongoDB, and that should be plenty. Even though it's free, it will ask you for a credit card, which it will not charge as long as you stay within the 500 megabytes. Right? Don't go above 500 megabytes. So yeah, it'll ask you. You'll need to enter your billing information. There's my billing information. That's my credit card. Once it creates the connection to MLab, it'll navigate to the MLab dashboard, and it'll show you. This is the URL. This is the URL that would allow any server, any Node.js server to connect to the MLab instance. Okay, this is the URL. It has the following pattern. It starts with MongoDB : / some user : some password for that user, and then this is the instance, the server instance, the port number, and then the name of the database. So this is hard coded, right? So you can't do anything with that. You have to take that. But you will need to create a user. You need to create a user who's allowed to connect to that database. Yes. To create users, down below there's a tab here that allows you to create users for that database. Right. Create a couple of users. Right. Maybe create an admin user. Just with admin. Right. Admin username, admin password, or choose a more secure password. And then you can give them write access, read access, read write access, and so then from Node.js you'll need to use this URL, right, to connect to the MongoLab instance. Yes, so that it can connect, so that the remote Node.js can connect to the remote MLab instance. Yes, right. Now. Notice that these usernames and passwords, you're going to need to put them in your source code, right? Because your source code needs to run the server and then connect to the database, yes? It's a bad practice to copy and paste username and passwords onto your source code because the source code is going to be publicly available on GitHub. Well, unless you're using a private account. Even then, even if it's private, right? It's bad practice to put any credential information in source code. Instead, you'll notice that we saw an example of reading environment variables. Yes, reading environment variables. So I walk you through putting your username and passwords on environment variables, right, as opposed to in source code. Yes, right. So that when the server runs, it reads the usernames and passwords from the environment variables, right, and then just concatenates it over here and generates the URL so you can connect to Node.js. I don't want to see username and passwords on source code. Yes, no username and passwords or any credential information or private keys or API keys, not in source code, right? It should all be in environment variables. Everybody good? All right. All right, so here I believe I created a couple of usernames, an admin user. So that's going to be the username, right? And whatever password I created for that username. Here's some documentation on creating environment variables using the Heroku command line interface. You can say Heroku config : set, and then the variable name equal, and then the value. So for you, you'll create something like mlab username equal, and then admin, say, right? And then yet another one, mlab password equal, and then some password. Yes? Right, so this creates an environment variable in the remote server, in the remote Heroku server, right? So that when you run it remotely, it reads those environment variables, right? And then it can securely connect to the database. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right. That's just a couple things there. Very good. Any questions so far? All right, so let's go quickly through the agenda. Yeah, so this first week, we're going to be focusing on development environment, setting up the Git, Node.js, Mongodb, the IDE. Please, let's all standardize on WebStorm for the IDE. I know there's quite a few other IDEs out there. They're perfectly fine. But again, to make it easier for us, for the TAs and myself to support you, okay, let's standardize on WebStorm for debugging. Otherwise, it'll just make it harder for us to support you. All right. It has a pretty robust debugging facility so that we can help you better. It's a good IDE. It's widely used in the industry, and it's not it's not bad to learn yet another IDE. So notice here that it's due on, right? So this first assignment number 1, it's due next Tuesday. That's January 17. And the next assignment will be available next week. Well, actually, they're all available. If you want to start working on all of them, go ahead. Yes? And that won't be due till the end of this month, right? So you'll have 2 weeks. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, then assignment 3 will go out, and it won't be due for the next 2 weeks. Right? So you'll have one assignment due every 2 weeks. Yes. In between the 2 weeks, you'll have a quiz. So one Tuesday or Wednesday, you'll have an assignment due, and then the next Wednesday you'll have a quiz, and then next Tuesday will be an assignment due, and then next Wednesday will be a quiz. So quiz, assignment, it will be interlaced. Yes? Pretty good? The quizzes are online. They're through Blackboard, right? And it's presumably they're all taken here in class. You need to be here in class to take the quiz. It takes about 10-15 minutes. You need a password to start the quiz. The quizzes are in such a way that you have to answer the question, and then you go to the next question. You can't go back. So you have to answer that question, right, and then go back. You can't jump around. You have to answer the question, go next, answer the question, go next, answer the question. You can't say, I'll go back to that one, right? You have to answer the question and go forward. You cannot go backwards, right? And after 20, 30 minutes, it automatically submits. Right? So they're timed. Right, so you have that many minutes to complete. And you need a password. I will post the password on Piazza. Okay, there are a couple of folks that are taking this online, just a handful. So I will write the password here on the whiteboard, and I will post it on Piazza. If you can't make it to class because you're working, I understand. And so on Piazza, you'll have that password, right? But the intention is for you to be here in class. What else? Okay, so the second and third week are mostly dedicated to front-end development. I'm going to start at the front end. Some of this is going to be, I'm hoping it'll be boring, that you've already seen some HTML, you're already familiar with some HTML, some CSS, some JavaScript here and there. But I'm not going to assume that you do. Okay, so actually, how are we doing with HTML? Anybody has never done any HTML? Okay, it's okay not to not have done any HTML. We're going to give you all the tools here in class, and you should grab enough HTML to make you dangerous. We're not going to cover all of HTML. Right, only enough for us to be able to be competent developers. We're not going to be creating pretty websites, although aesthetics is going to be of importance here. we're not going to be creating websites. Right? We're going to be creating web applications. Right? We're going to be using the web as a development infrastructure. Okay, just like you would use and write .NET applications, desktop applications. We're going to use the web as the infrastructure where we're going to be running web applications built on web technologies, and we're going to be following the trends. The trends are that more and more folks are accessing the web using their phones, using their tablets, right? And that entails a whole set of considerations, right? Of building applications that are mobile first. They focus on mobile first, right? Folks that where the demographic is going, right? Most people are going to be accessing your application through a phone, a small screen. So we should target those folks first, yes? And it also brings about a particular philosophy about thinking about what it is that you're building, identifying what it is most important to show right away, right? What should be at the top of the screen, right? What do we want to focus on first? Also, making the fonts and the sizes of the buttons and the input fields large enough for for fingers, right, to be able to interact with these things, right? Also use as much the phone widgets that might already be built onto the phone, right? So we're going to be also making applications that are responsive, right? That if you access with a phone, it looks good. If you access with a larger screen, it looks good as well, right? So that they're responsive, right? So no matter what size screen you give me, it's always usable, right? It's always provides a good experience. So we're going to take a look at Bootstrap as a style sheet, a standard style sheet that allows us to very quickly create responsive mobile-first applications that look professional right out of the box. Yes. If you instead want to use materials, that's fine as well, or foundations, or some other standard CSS library. That's okay, right? But the course and the assignments are based on Bootstrap. Okay. But if for your project you want to use some other CSS library, that's fine, right? But for the assignments, Bootstrap. Okay. So we're going to be for the first assignment, we're going to be building something that is static, right? Yes.
Sorry, because you keep making a distinction between the assignments and the project.
Yes.
Is the project completely distinct? It's not
Yes.
built on the assignments.
Right. Distinct. Yes, you're going to be building something completely different. You're free to build whatever you want. I do give some broad guidelines on what is the minimum expected, right? And if you're within those guidelines, you're free to do whatever you want. Okay. If you think that you have a better idea that escapes these boundaries, talk to me. Okay, but if it's within that boundary, you don't have to ask me for any permission. Okay, but if you have a competing idea that is equally as complex, okay, we can negotiate, right? And says, okay, well, instead of this requirement, how about that other requirement, right? It's fairly same complexity. That's okay. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so yes, but if you're within those boundaries, you don't need to ask for permission, right? If you come and ask me, can I do this? The first thing I'm going to ask you, are they within those boundaries, right? If you say yes, this says, well, don't tell me. All right? If you do escape those boundaries, then please come see me.
Sorry,
Yes.
So then, Heroku then, we're deploying it, but we're also obviously pushing GitHub, is the deploying only so you can see it, and that's why it doesn't matter if you do AWS, Heroku, or anything else.
Right. Yes. Yep. For the first time this semester, well, projects you can always do whatever you want, right? You can think of really cool ideas. People build all sorts of things, right? We build music sites, or movie sites, or sports sites, or food sites, or job sites. We build all sorts of things. And one of the requirements, for instance, is that they whatever you choose should have some some notion of some kind of social networking thing, right, where folks can share something amongst themselves, that they can create some kind of content on their own, that you should have some kind of relationship with one user with other users, perhaps be able to find other users or follow other users or comment on other users, or some kind of relationship between users. Be able to whatever the domain you choose, there should be some relationship between the user and that particular domain object, right? Whether that domain object is a movie or a song or a sports team or some recipe or some food or restaurant or business, whatever that domain object is, right? There would be a general requirement that you create some kind of relationship, right? A user creates many recipes, or a user creates many playlists, yes? Or a user, bookmarks several favorites, whatever, okay? And also there should be some relationship between domain objects, right? For instance, playlists is a domain object, right, of presumably movies or songs, right? And playlists contain other domain objects, right? They're containers of other domain objects. Playlists contain songs. Playlists contains movies, right? Or, for instance, if you're doing movies, you might say actors in movies. You have actors play in movies. Movies contain many actors, right? So there's a relationship between those two domain objects, yes? Right, so that's one of the general requirements, that there should be some relationship between the domain objects, yes? Whatever the domain object you choose. You choose the domain objects, but there should be some relationship between them, yes? That's a general requirement, yes? I will post the requirements for the project. So I was saying, for the first time, I am offering the opportunity for you to work with a real company, right? For you to, I've contacted several companies around the area, and some of them have agreed to employ, a limited amount of students, right? That might want to work with them. Yes, the stack that they're going to be using is going to be comparable to the stack we're going to be using here in class, and whatever you build for the company will be valid as a requirement for the project. Okay, it's going to be somewhat informal. You don't have to be there physically, but you will be formally an employee of that company for 3 or 4 months. Okay, you get a chance to interact with their team, with their director or managers, right? They're going to give a chance to know you a little better. You know them. Obviously, they'll look at this as an opportunity to identify talents, right? Gives you a foot in the door, and also work on a real project. Okay, this is the first time I'm trying this out, right? So it's a pilot. See how it goes. If it goes well, I'd like to expand that a little later. Obviously, not all of you can work there. If you are interested, please send me resumes. I will forward the resumes to the companies, and the company will choose. Right? I won't be vetting them. I don't want to have getting into any problems. Yes.
These paid positions.
They are paid positions. Some of them are. Yes.
If the company likes our resume and then picks us, are we allowed to say no?
Yes. Yep. Yes. You're not obligated in any way to participate, and you can just pick out whatever you're. Maybe you don't like the project they're offering. It says, no, that's boring. I don't want to do that. That's totally okay. You're not obligated at all. And you can default to some other project idea that you might have. If you do commit, right? The idea would be that you are representing the university, right? That whatever you do for this for these folks, right? It'll reflect on the university, right? That you are there, obviously working for them, right? But you are representing the university. It would look very bad if halfway through there it says, you know what, I don't want to do this project, I'll do something on my own. So if you do have commitment, please, right, I would expect that you go through that commitment. Yes?
Are you
Yes, the one that is hiring and paying is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. They're publishers. They publish the Scholastic, all the books on Scholastic. They do a lot of online books, right, for folks to learn things online and take quizzes online and do math and reading and all sorts of. Most of the books now in high school level are now online, right? And they can interact and do all sorts of dynamic content for that. A lot of it is using the mean stack. A lot of them are using the back end. They're using Java, but using Angular in the front end. They're using a lot of the cutting edge stuff. It's pretty exciting. Okay. There'll be some kind of a small interview process. You would be required to go there once a week to give a demo, right? Like a half hour, an hour demo, and say where you are, what have you accomplished. You'd be expected maybe to work on it, 5, 10, 50 hours a week, maybe perhaps. It's open to you. But it's understandable that you have other things to do academically, and that's going to be the primary focus is the academic portion of this, not you working for someone. Okay, so it's somewhat informal. You're formally an employee, but you are foremost a student here. Yes. All right. Again, it's a pilot. I have a couple of other startups. Those are not paid, but their products might be more interesting to you. So anyway, yes, please send me a resume if you are interested. All right, I think we're almost halfway through. Let's take a quick break, all right, and then we'll come back right after these messages.